So I was in San Francisco at that time, and she calls me up. She doesn't care what time it is. It's the middle of the night for me there. And she says, I've looked at the numbers. You have 6 months. Either you turn the company around or you shut it down. Burning 1 crore a month is no way how to run a business. A friend of mine, he said, Rajesh, you've been struggling for the last 6 to 7 years to grow your company. The problem is you. You come up with all of these ideas and you have no way how to sell them. You have to have the confidence that you know yourself best. And to borrow a dialogue from 𝐓𝐴𝐻𝐿, I am my own favorite. I am Rajesh Jain, a serial tech entrepreneur. I founded Netcore Cloud, and I recently authored a book on entrepreneurship, Startup to Proficorn.
Rajesh Jain, good morning and welcome to Qunba. It's an honor to have you here with us today. Rajesh, I've often heard you say a company cannot be a democracy and you should have one person at the top making all decisions. But how do you empower people with that thought process to dissent? And how do you deal with that dissent in your ideas and decision making?
I think first is you must have a culture where there is no fear, where people can speak their mind out. And I have lots of brainstorming meetings where I tell people, look, these are my ideas, tell me what your ideas are. And then we talk about it. But at the end of the day, someone's going to make a decision. So that's where the authoritarian or the dictatorial, you can't have people casting votes on the way or on the future direction of the company. The second part is that how to encourage people to basically give feedback. What they should know is what I'm going to do with the feedback that they are giving. And for me, it's about how I change my mind. I have a certain set of mental models. We all have mental models which we use for decision making. So the question I ask is, the new information that the person has given, how does that change what I am thinking? Are my priors, are my assumptions wrong? And if so, then I need to adapt. I need to edit what I'm thinking.
Rajesh, you decided to hire a professional to lead Netcore in 2007 when you realized the firm wasn't growing fast enough. As a founder, how did you decide when it's the right time to pass on reins?
I did not make the decision. A friend of mine did for me. So it was Rajat Barjatia. We used to walk together. We used to talk about our businesses. And then one day he said, Rajesh, you've been struggling for the last 6 to 7 years to grow your company. The problem is you. You come up with all of these ideas and you have no way how to sell them. You need someone who can commercialize all the ideas that you're coming up with. My initial reaction was pushback. How can I have someone else in my company make these big decisions? And he said, you decide. You can stay small and struggle, or you can aim to get to a higher level with help from someone else. And he recommended me a person that I should just meet him, 𝐒𝐚𝐲𝐬 Saxena. He's very different from you. He's a person with a media background, very sales-oriented person. He understands the real world of business a lot better than you do. Talk to him. I met 𝐒𝐚𝐲𝐬 and we hit it off very well. But I realized he was very different from me. And I said, how do we leverage those strengths rather than get my weaknesses come in the way? And for that, he had to have autonomy. So all my CEO decisions, I've never gone out looking for people. 𝐒𝐚𝐲𝐬 was there, then Girish Nair, and then Kalpit as the third CEO in Netcore. And I think the decision really for a founder has to be, what does the company need? What is it that I am good at? And if there is a gap between those two, you need help. You need to get someone from the outside.
What's a rookie mistake that you've often seen young leaders make?
And the rookie mistake is thinking they still are an individual contributor. So the IC role has to be left behind when you become a manager. I think you're not responsible for other people. Your role is showing them the future, guiding them, mentoring them, coaching them, and not getting involved in the details. Let other people fail, you become their safety net.
Rajesh, I've heard you say that your wife and current CHRO of Netcore, Bhavna Jain, helped you pull the company out of a crisis in 07-08 when it was burning 1 crore a month. How did she help you and what did you rely on her for?
So that specific incident was the one time in my life I chased valuation and not profits. I was too enamored saying that, look, we had a small B2C business in Netcore, we'll grow that and we'll reach N million people, so we are spending the money really on acquiring customers at that time. And Bhavna had taken a break for a few years because Abhishek had been born in 2005. And after he was older, she started coming back to the company, and she's a CA. So the first thing she asks is for the numbers in the company, and she sees, oh, 1 crore going away every month. So I was in San Francisco at that time, and she calls me up. She doesn't care what time it is. It's the middle of the night for me there. And she says, I've looked at the numbers. You have 6 months. Either you turn the company around or you shut it down. Burning 1 crore a month is no way how to run a business. And I'm trying to explain, no, we're going to get like $40 million, $50 million valuation, nothing doing. You have 6 months. Either you shut it down or I'm shutting it down. So I came back and I told her, give me a few more months. We did turn it around. We broke even in 9 months, and we've never lost money after that. So I turned to her because we are very different people. She's one person who will tell it to me like it is. And I think everyone needs that.
She's not an echo chamber. Like
Absolutely not. What I've realized is there's a difference between being intelligent and being smart. I may have the intelligence, but she has the street smartness on the decisions that need to be made. And I think you need a combination of both to succeed in life.
Rajesh, you made sure in your previous company, India World, that it was profitable before selling it to Satyam in '99 for $100 million. What is your take today on entrepreneurs, capitalists, venture capitalists that are pursuing growth at all costs?
Blitzscaling has a role in certain maybe areas, but at the end of the day, a business is about making profits. And when I meet entrepreneurs, I tell them that you cannot build a business assuming that you're going to keep raising round after round after round of capital. When you start, you need a clear path to profitability. And growth at all costs cannot be the business model.
Rajesh, what's the most common piece of career advice that you completely disagree with?
I think for a founder, and I've spoken to quite a few of them, for a founder, the belief is that I need co-founders. That, oh, I need a person, if I'm good in engineering, I need someone in marketing or sales. That has its own problems because companies are not democracies. There has to be one leader, and I say in my book, avoid equal co-founders. Equity is one thing, but decision-making has to be a single person in the company. From a founder perspective, it's basically, if you're building a business, be in charge, hire people, but not necessarily as equals.
So if I were to double click on that thought, how do you square that up with building an organization where everybody has a voice, that you can dissent, that it's not a one-man army? How do you square that up with making senior leadership feel that they've got an equal say or vote in the system?
Number one, I think you need to have a clarity of purpose. What is the problem the company is solving? You've got to align people on that. So it's not about the technology. You've got to fall in love with the problem. So everyone's got to be aligned on what is the sort of vision, mission of the company. And that's really the big problem that we are solving. The second is that take inputs from everyone. You need an open culture where people are not hesitant to speak out. But at the end of the day, decisions are not made like in a democracy by casting votes. It's authoritarian. It's even dictatorial. One person has to decide, and that has to be clear to everyone. Otherwise, you get analysis paralysis.
Rajesh, how do you suggest one gives feedback to his or her boss without actually offending them?
Speak frankly, give examples, and listen to what the boss will tell you back. So it's not just one way, you've also got to be two-way when you're giving feedback. You've got to be able to take it in terms of the response that you get.
Rajesh, what are 2 qualities that are most underrated or unutilized by leadership in India today?
Authenticity, because we all try and clone other people. We look for idols and we say, okay, I must be like that person. And the second is big problem solving. I keep telling people, I said it takes the same amount of time to fail whether you're trying a small idea or a big idea. Focus on the big problems. The world has lots of big problems. And I don't think we do enough of the big thinking. What are the big problems of the world that I can solve as a leader?
What are the most common myths or misconceptions about leadership that you'd like to clarify?
That the leader's role is easy. Everyone looks at the CEO, looks at how much they earn, looks at sort of the life they lead. The actual CEO's life is actually a lonely life. Well, the buck stops with you. If the company is not doing well, it's a hard, you don't have anyone else to really turn to. The myth is that there are more ups in CEO's life than downs. As a founder, I tell entrepreneurs, your life is going to be where you come into work, you have a list of 20 things to do, it's 5 o'clock in the evening, and you're going to find that you've not finished probably 15 of the 20 tasks, and you're going to like that feeling.
And what do you think the world is adopting from the Indian CEO today on leadership?
I think empathy and humility. I think we in India tend to view our employees as family. And I think there is greater understanding of people and their problems, which I don't really see as strongly in Western markets. Here you'll pretty much know a lot about their families and their lives. In Western markets, I think there's a clear wall where you will not cross a certain boundary.
You've often said you were a serial failure before finding success with India World. How did owning your failures, Rajesh, help you in your leadership style?
The failure is never easy. For everyone who says you learn a lot from failure, I think that learning pales with the pain that one has to go through. You never start out wanting to fail and say, I'm going to fail and therefore I'm going to learn. For me, I think failure was about myself and the mistakes that I made. Every time I fell in love with the technology, this is really cool and I got to do something with it. What I lost out on was what is the real problem that I'm solving. And this is one big learning through the years. If you can focus on the problem rather than the solution, and every time I failed, when I introspect, I realized that I was probably more excited about the tech or the solution rather than the problem.
And what's been your favorite failure of yours?
The favorite failure has to be the one before India World. Because if that had succeeded, I would not have done India World. So the one before India World, the one which failed, was an image processing software where I would analyze images from different devices. I tried to sell it for 2 years, and I realized that the tendering cycle is just so long in government institutions, I'll not survive. And because that failed, I had to look at alternatives. And from those alternatives emerged India World. So always the N-1th failure before the success is the best failure.
What is the biggest risk you've taken in your career, Rajesh, that has paid off, and the one risk that hasn't?
I think the biggest risk was starting India World. I had come back from the US in '92. For almost 2.5, 3 years, everything I tried failed. When I came back, I thought I was God's gift to the country. IIT education, US education, and then 3 years down the line, I just could not succeed at anything. And at that time, to do yet another venture with completely uncertain outcomes, and especially when even the internet was not commercially available in the country, where we had the daily challenge of dialing and uploading data to a server in the US. And no one had any idea on how the internet will shape up. That I think was a big risk. The big failure is actually in the political space. When I wanted to create a movement for prosperity in India between 2015-16 and 2018. And I thought that talking about the right ideas, talking about what leads to prosperity, why are some countries rich, why is India poor, would change people's minds and therefore their votes. I was very naive. Nothing worked.
How does one get better at decision making as a leader, Rajesh?
Focus on what is consequential and irreversible. In a 2x2 matrix, you'll get consequential, inconsequential, reversible, irreversible. Focus on consequential and irreversible. All other decisions don't make that much of a difference. Even if it's a big decision, distill it down to the core, which is consequential, irreversible. Spend your time focused on that.
Rajesh, what's the most brutal feedback you ever received on your leadership? Who did it come from and what did they tell you?
So Kalpit, my CEO, keeps giving me this feedback. I have too many ideas. In meetings and in one-to-ones, my mind goes too fast and the ideas actually can be very distracting. Everyone's got a job to do. Okay? So there's a time and place for ideas, but it can't be in every meeting, hey, let's try this, let's try that. Because there's a trade-off. And if you're going to do something, then something else is not going to get done. But that's my nature. Yeah, because I don't have to worry about direct reports, I don't have to worry about the sort of short term. I tend to think long term. But I think too many ideas can also be a problem because then people get confused on the forward direction.
What's the best mentoring advice you have given someone?
I don't like mentoring because you have to get too much into other people's lives, and I don't like to do that. What I do tell people when they come to me, I said is trust your own gut instinct. You have to have the confidence that you know yourself best. And to borrow a dialogue from Jab We Met, I am my own favorite. As a mentor, basically, how do you help people discover themselves? See, the answers are within them. Now, they may need some guidance on specific things, in which case, of course, you guide them, you help them on those things. But to get into a longer-term therapy-type discussion, that's not done.
If you could ask someone one question in an interview, and based on only that one question you would hire them, what would that be?
What's the game-changing idea you have for my business? Now, that will tell me two things. It will tell me how much research the person has done, and there's plenty of information out there today to do the research and come prepared. And second is, what's the forward-thinking capabilities of that person? Has that person been able to identify the problems correctly and therefore think about what possible solutions can be there? How do you change the trajectory of the company in a disruptive way? That tells me a lot about how the person thinks.
Rajesh Jain's $100 delta decision rule, what's that about?
I was going to New York once. I was prepared to pay $200 for a hotel room, but the rooms I was seeing online were all at like $300 plus. And I was going to stay there for a few nights. I spent like an hour or more trying to find cheaper hotels. But we know how it is, right? The cheaper hotels come pretty far. And I sat after an hour and I said, why am I wasting my time? It's $100 a night. If I calculate the amount of money I'm spending on my ticket, the conference, the rest of the other things I'm going to be doing on that trip, this is insignificant. It's not even 1% of the total cost. What I got spooked was that I was prepared to pay 200, but the 300 figure was a problem for me. How can I pay $300 for a hotel room? But what I had not realized is that the delta was $100. I was prepared to pay 200. And that's how I came up with this $100 delta decision, because when I thought about it, I said, I do this a lot in my life. We look at the absolute value rather than what is the threshold we are willing to pay and what's the difference between, what's the delta, where we are asking ourselves questions. Take a book in a bookstore. How many times have we picked up a book and then we see, oh, it's 800 rupees or 1500 rupees and we just keep it back. Maybe I'll go and check on Amazon or somewhere else where I'll get it cheaper. What we don't realize is that the time that you're going to spend reading the book and the cost of that is far greater than the 500, 700 rupees you're going to pay for the book. So the $100 delta decision rule is set a threshold in your life below which the answer should always be yes. Don't think about it.
As you become more successful, it's easy to become complacent. You've often said you avoid this by keeping your ears to the ground and interacting with people who know more than you. Who are these people in your life and how do you identify them?
And the person who knows me better than I do is my wife, Bhavna. We have worked together for the last 30 years. And she consistently gives me feedback. We are very different. She does people, I do tech. But her instinct is very good. So she is one person. 𝐓𝐡𝐢𝐬, the Netcore CEO, is another person. And then there are these groups of friends. I think we all have our friend circle, people who've been with you. And the importance of friends is that they give you advice or they give you inputs based on who you are. There are no edge. They're not wondering about how you're going to think about it. There's no transactional nature in that advice. I think the other place where I learn a lot is from conferences, especially in the US. Because for me, it's about what are the new areas in technology, what are the new thought which is happening. While Twitter and all the other things are good, nothing better than being in a room where you are fully immersed into what the other person is saying. When what that person is saying, interacting with my thoughts, are where the new ideas comes from, where the learning really happens. And third is, talk to people who are closest to customers. they will give you insight. They may not put it in the best way, but they will use the phrases that the customer is using. They're going to talk about the problems the customers have. Those tend to get filtered as they move up the ladder. So spend time both meeting customers and meeting those in the organization closest to the customer. That's the best source of input.
Who in Business India is inspiring you right now and why?
I think the one person, I would say it's not technically business, but if I just drop the word business and I keep the word India, I think there's a lot to learn from Narendra Modi. Whatever be your political ideologies, I think here is a person who basically, even at the level of power that the Prime Minister has, he is not willing to go with the status quo. Always experimenting, setting higher goals, okay? Always willing to take bets which may not result in success, and then saying, okay, not working, we'll try something different. I mean, in that sense, he is a real political entrepreneur. And I think there's a lot to learn. So if you set aside whatever the ideologies may be, because there are a lot of divisions when I talk to people about this, but I think if you look at the actions that are being driven in politics is very different from business on one thing. There are no prizes for getting 49.9% market share. It's a winner take all. It's life and death for a politician. If you are in the wilderness for 5 years, it could be the end of your career. So the decisions that they are making have huge implications for themselves. So learning from the best politicians, I think, and I would say Narendra Modi ranks up there, probably one of the best politicians the world has seen in the last 2 generations.
Rajesh, if you were in my seat and had the option to interview someone, who would it be and what would you ask them?
Ask Bhavna the same questions you've asked me. I think your viewers will learn a lot more from her. I have not managed people for 16 years. She is out there with people all the day, managers, leaders, okay, new hires. I think that's what you should do.
After 3 decades, what's the goal and what's the chase that brings Rajesh to work every single day?
At one level, it's finding big problems to solve. I don't worry about failure. Most often what keeps us back is the fear of failure. So if you set that aside, what are the big problems? Today, the big problem which I think is there is half the money, $250 billion is being wasted on digital advertising. How can we solve that problem? Because there lies the secret to brand profit. All the e-commerce companies not being profitable. At the second level, I do this exercise every few years. I write my obituary. What would I like to have done in life at the end of my life? And there are 3 things. One is build an enduring great company. I hope Netcore can become that. We are 26 years and counting. The second is how can I transform India? How can I help Indians become rich? You don't have to leave India to have high per capita income. India is still a poor country. I mean, Indians are rich. So how can we put India on the path to prosperity, to sustainable, lasting prosperity? And the third is, how can we build institutions that last in India? The social space, the contributions that people make are, a lot of the companies, think tanks to other institutions I've seen are 5 crores, 10 crores. What would you do if you had $100 million for an institution? The ones which are there, like the ones which are there in the US, like Andrew Carnegie, the library system that he built in the US. How can we think really, really big, 10x, 100x bigger, and build institutions that last in this country? So my hope is to build a few of those for generations yet to come.
Let's roll. Sound check, phones off. Unique interviews we've had. Thank you so much.